The White Panther Party of Detroit and Ann Arbor, Michigan was a radical counterculture group which became a major target for the FBI's counterintelligence or COINTELPRO program between 1968 and 1971. In October of 1970, the FBI referred to the White Panthers as potentially the largest and most dangerous revolutionary organization in the United States. So today, we're going to give you some background on this group and why they are so pivotal to the legal landscape as well as the civil rights movement in the United States.
Welcome back to our channel. I'm Haas.
I'm Cece.
Today we got a hot topic for you. Welcome back, adventure seekers. So, the White Panthers, how did they come about? That's the question, right?
How did they come about?
Well, during a radio show interview in 1968, Huey Newton was asked, how can white people support the Black Panther Party?
Okay.
And it seemed like they also wanted to see if white people could join the Black Panther Party.
Okay.
And he responded by saying they should start their own organization and be in solidarity with the Black Panther Party.
Okay. Listening to this interview at that time was a white counterculture group who called themselves the Detroit Artists Workshop.
Okay. Now the collective was a radical arts group founded in 1964 near Wayne State University.
Okay.
Right? And among its concerns was the legalization of marijuana and the ills of capitalism. And they had a network of communal houses, a print shop, and a performance space. And they had heard the Huey Newton interview and decided to found the White Panther Party.
Now, this White Panther Party had three primary founders. There was jazz, rock and roll photographer Lenny Sinclair.
Okay.
And who also, by the way, ran this company called the Magic Veil Light Company, which produced psychedelic light shows. And then there was jazz poet John Sinclair, who managed the gritty proto-punk band MC5. And then, of course, there was the communal member. His name was Pun Plumunden, who ended up driving equipment trucks for rock bands. The group was most active in Detroit and Ann Arbor, Michigan area, and they defined themselves as the White Panthers, and that they were basically fighting for a clean planet, and they were freeing political prisoners. That was pretty much their motto. And they added other elements along the way, such as advocating for rock and roll, dope, and making love in the streets, and also abolishing capitalism.
Dope. Now, dope. The word dope. I mean, you know, that's when you hear the word dope, you're like, oh man, that's a harsh word. See that this classification of dope covers all of it. Well, you know, when I thought about dope, it usually was harsh.
Well, I'm sure John Sinclair's use of the word dope in this situation was more casual, you know, because I think that's just what they called it back then.
Exactly. Right. Apparently, he meant marijuana as dope. I mean, that's what he thought of was dope also. Was marijuana.
Anything that made you dopey.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because it makes you dopey, right?
Well, that's an interesting part. Just wanted a caveat there, a little sidebar. But you know, I also wanted to note that the White Panther Party chose their name without consulting with the Black Panther Party, right? And in fact, the Black Panthers initially used to joke by saying the White Panthers were a group of psychedelic clowns. They said they called they're being a bunch of psychedelic clowns.
Wow.
You know, but the Black Panthers changed their perspective, you know, as they saw how the White Panther Party was being instrumental in distributing the Black Panther Party's papers in Detroit and throughout Michigan.
Okay. Well, in the years leading up to the formation of the White Panther Party, the Detroit Artists Workshop, you know, had been previously targeted by police, and they have been raided numerous times. And I think in one big bust, there have been 54 people who were once arrested.
Right.
And typically, it was just for marijuana possession.
Right.
And following one of the police raids, the Detroit Artists Workshop reorganized into a group called Trans Love Energies Unlimited.
Yeah, I like
now,
that.
That's a crazy name.
That's a cool name.
Trans Love Energies Unlimited.
They're transferring love and energy unlimited. Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean that's a poet that came up with that. Folks was snapping when they heard those type of names. But anyway, go ahead.
But on a more serious note, they did this group. They did as Trans Love Energies Unlimited. They did help a lot of homeless people who had been left homeless after the Detroit uprising against the police in 1967.
Gotcha.
In which I think 2,000 buildings were burned to the ground.
Yeah.
And during the uprising, the workshop, the counterculturists, they flew a banner outside of their commune that said "Burn, baby, burn," which actually ended up with the police raiding them again and actually halting their ability to help these people who had been homeless during that time period. But
white members of the Detroit Artists Workshop were not only receptive to the Black Panthers' message because of their negative experience with police and their shared vision of capitalism as oppressive, but as jazz aficionado John Sinclair puts it, we dug black people, man. You know, that's where the great music came from, baby, and the great weed and the refreshing concepts of sexuality. All of that stuff didn't come from no white people. Are you kidding me?
Okay. So this is what you're saying. This is what John Sinclair said.
This is what John Sinclair said.
Okay.
So
you're channeling him.
I was channeling him. For many of the white counterculturalists, particularly those who joined the White Panther Party, their fantasy of black culture offered an expression of freedom from everything they felt was wrong with white America.
That's a very interesting perspective.
That is, isn't it?
It is. It is. So, with that said, the White Panther Party issued their own 10-point platform. And so, number one, I'm just going to read it off here to you guys. Number one started with the full endorsement and support of the Black Panther Party 10-point program. So, meaning they were in support of everything the Black Panther Party was trying to represent and so forth. Right. And number two is a total assault on the culture by any means necessary, including rock and roll, dope, and effing or making love in the streets.
It wasn't making love. They wanted to do more than make love.
Anyway, number three was the free exchange of energy and materials. So basically, we demanded an end of money. So I think that was basically like they wanted to have like a barter system, you know, where I grew some green beans. You made a shirt. So rather than exchanging with money, we'll just do an exchange for what we need.
Exactly.
Number four was free food, clothes, housing, dope, music, bodies, medical care. So basically everything free for everybody.
So they wanted their drugs and the things that they use for their fun to be for free too.
Yeah, everything for free. It just go and select it.
That's a lot.
Number five is free access to information, media, free technology from the greed creeps, which, you know, I think that's still a fight that we're having nowadays. And then, of course, number six was free time and space for all humans, dissolve all unnatural boundaries. Number seven was free all schools and all structures from corporate rule, and turn the buildings over to the people immediately. Number eight was free all prisoners everywhere. They are our brothers. And number nine was free all soldiers at once, no more conscripted armies. And number 10 was free people from their leaders, because leaders suck. And all people, all power to all people. Freedom means free everyone.
Yeah.
So that was the last one.
I think that a lot of those concepts were valid, but some of those concepts were a little, too much.
So John Sinclair, who called himself the Minister of Information within his group, he said that our program is cultural revolution through a total assault on the culture, which means that every tool and every energy and every media that they can get their collective hands on, that they're going to take those programs everywhere to everybody by any means necessary and distribute it and expose as many people to it as possible.
Right. And Lawrence Plumondon, who was the Minister of Defense, stated, "We take our heroes, those that we have been told to hate, interfere, such as Eldridge Cleaver, such as H. Rap Brown, such as Fidel Castro. You know, they felt like the Red Guards are their brothers, and the Black Panthers, you know, are their brothers, and they joined with them in the liberation of the planet. That was forward thinking for them.
It was. Their belief in basic survival needs was what stood out the most to me, and they basically said that food and stuff should be free, and they were able to pool their money together to purchase bulk food in San Francisco for 5,000 families. And I think that is a, you know,
that's awesome. So then, in 1968, just 1 year after the group was founded, Lawrence Pun Plumundon, along with John Sinclair, was indicted in connection to the bombing of a Central Intelligence Agency office in Ann Arbor, which was on September 29th, 1968.
Right. And so Plumundon, he actually fled to Algeria, where he actually joined the Black Panthers' Eldridge Cleaver. Meanwhile, in 1969, John Sinclair was arrested, and at that time he was arrested for offering 2 joints to an undercover officer. And this arrest came with the possible penalty of 10 years in prison. They deemed this as a very harsh sentence, so it kind of mobilized the counterculture. So everyone from John Lennon to Stevie Wonder, from Allen Ginsberg to the co-founder of the Black Panther Party, who was Bobby Seale, you know, came together for a John Sinclair freedom rally. And so eventually both Sinclair and Plumundon was freed afterwards, when it was discovered that the government had been surveilling them without a warrant in what became a major U.S. Supreme Court precedent. About a year into the investigation, the FBI connected the 3 Ann Arbor bombing incidents to a string of politically motivated bombings in Southeast Michigan in 1970. And around this time, this guy named David Valor confessed to carrying out and aiding these attacks, right? And so the FBI used Valor's testimony to charge 3 prominent radicals who in this conspiracy, and they ended up being John Sinclair of the White Panther Party, John W. Forrest, and of course Lawrence Pun Plumundon. And they were accused of helping Valor to choose the bombing locations in Ann Arbor, even though Valor was not a member of the White Panther Party. But Plumundon was also accused of planning the bomb at the CIA office, and the FBI's case against the trio included Plumundon's recorded conversations from a phone that was wiretapped as a result of an unrelated investigation. And so, much to the surprise of the White Panthers' defense lawyers, the prosecution actually admitted during the pre-trial hearings that they had, you know, that they didn't bother to obtain a warrant for this wiretap.
So the FBI instead relied on the provision in the newly passed Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets Act of 1968, which gave them the power to monitor without a warrant any person or group they suspected of attempting to overthrow the United States. Right? Government.
Gotcha.
But before the trial even began, the defense's challenge of this warrantless wiretap made it all the way to the Supreme Court. Right?
And so while the original trial would have just focused on determining the potential guilt and motivations behind the White Panther Party and for the bombings, the Supreme Court instead had to answer fundamental constitutional questions surrounding this wiretapping. And so number 1 was, does the government have the power to surveil citizens without due process that is guaranteed by the 4th Amendment if it believes those citizens are plotting to overthrow the government? And then, if so, what are the limits of this power?
The question before the court is whether the 4th Amendment is going to be protected, whether the protections of the 4th Amendment are going to be respected, and whether people are going to be protected against the arbitrary power of the government. And in the case of U.S. versus U.S. District Court, commonly known as the Keith case, held that the 4th Amendment shielded private speech from surveillance unless a warrant had been granted, and that the warrant procedure would not frustrate the legitimate purpose of domestic security searches.
So, in a unanimous 8-0 ruling, the Supreme Court held that government officials are obligated to obtain a warrant before beginning electronic surveillance, even when domestic security issues are involved.
Okay.
And so Justice Lewis Powell was one of the people who weighed in on this, and he wrote into the court saying that in this case, perceived threats against the state under the Fourth Amendment protections become more necessary since history abundantly documents the tendency for government to view with suspicion those who fervently dispute its policies.
And so this judgment freed Plumondon. And as we stated, the Supreme Court upheld the prior rulings in the case, holding that the wiretaps were an unconstitutional violation of the Fourth Amendment, and as such must be disclosed to the defense. And this established the precedent that a warrant needed to be obtained before beginning electronic surveillance, even if domestic security issues were involved. So in essence, the White Panther Party actually saved a lot of black activists and other activists in general from prosecution. And
not just that, but also just any person from being wrongfully surveilled.
Absolutely.
For no reason, because if the police just, don't like the way you look, they don't like the way you walk, they suspect something about you, they can't just walk in and say, we're going to wiretap your phone tonight and see what they're talking about.
They're not going to be able to just fly their drones over us, folks, and peeking in in our backyards and seeing what we're doing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And just watching us, and then using that as a way to prosecute us. They're not going to be able to do that.
Right, exactly.
So that's a beauty to living in the U.S.
Right. So you didn't mention this, but was John Sinclair also freed?
He was freed, but it was on bond. Because he was still fighting his possession conviction.
Oh, right. So he had, okay, gotcha.
So in 1972, the Michigan Supreme Court ruled in the People versus Sinclair that Michigan's classification of marijuana was unconstitutional. And in effect, decriminalized possession until a new law conformed to the ruling, which passed by the Michigan legislature a week later.
So wait a minute. So you're saying that for 1 week, and he was freed as a result of that, because for that 1 week it was deemed unconstitutional.
It was deemed unconstitutional. Correct.
That's crazy.
And so Sinclair was freed, like you said. But the cumulative effects of the imprisonment had marked the end of the White Panthers Party in Michigan, which renamed itself the Rainbow People's Party. And this was while John Sinclair and Plumondon were in prison. And so the Rainbow People's Party, headquartered in Ann Arbor, they eventually disbanded in 1973.
Okay. So I just want to give you guys one last factoid. So the reason why they refer to this case as the Keith case is because it was presided over by Judge Damon J. Keith. And Judge Keith was the one who rejected the government's claim that it had the authority to conduct the electronic surveillance without a warrant on anyone, even if it was considered a national security threat. Now, Judge Keith was appointed to the Federal Court of Michigan in 1967, and that was only about 3 years after the Federal Civil Rights Act had been signed. And at that time, Keith was subjugated to death threats, and he and his family were placed under the protection of the U.S. Marshal Service, and he unfortunately passed away on April 28th of 2019, but his legacy changed the social and legal landscape of our country, and I just felt that he needed a little special.
Absolutely. Needs his flowers.
Right, exactly.
Because, that definitely pulled the government out of our business a little bit, which, is important. We don't want a police state governing over us, and we don't have any freedoms. You know what I'm saying? So definitely owe a lot to Judge Keith and our, giving us our freedoms to be activists and to protest. without being under surveillance.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Well, that's all for today, Adventure Seekers. We hope we have given you guys a little bit of history and that you might consider liking, commenting, or even sharing this video. And until next time, Adventure Seekers, be true to yourself, patient with others, and keep your mind sharp. Be the change you want to see in the world.